David, I felt every moment of that, and some of the things that you said I could identify with because being a father, right, and such. Your choice of words were very compelling and very gripping and inviting to draw a person into the reading. You could visualize everything, and I just want to say that was nice.
Thank you.
That was nice.
Thank you.
I don't, so.
Well, you're not crying, so it couldn't have been as effective as I wanted it to be. But
She did ask if I needed to tissue after your first comment about.
punching in the throat.
Yeah. But what, so going from your introduction, where do you see yourself taking the story right after that well-placed introduction?
Well, the whole memoir is what effectively, up to that point, was the worst day of my life. I had a rather public meltdown, breakdown, in front of my kids and their mom. And it was a singularly horrific day. Because I'm a pretty perverse person. My son is here, by the way. He was 3, I don't know how much he remembers, but in my own sense of perversity, hell yeah, I'm gonna write that down. Right. I'm going to tell that story, and so this is the introduction. The first chapter is literally moments before I have the breakdown, and the rest of it is really just an hour or two long of my life, 2 or 3 hours of my life. This is the introduction. It encompasses that whole morning.
It's amazing how much you can put down on a piece of paper from just a series of a couple hours.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit with you about teasing out sentences, lyrics.
Yes.
Right? I don't know if it's easier for me because I am writing, right? But in all prose, particularly personal prose, memoir, it's amazing how many words you can get out of a few seconds of thought, right? If you have the right combination of imagery, experience, in my case, mental disability, right, in that moment anyway, right? So maybe it's because I chose memoir, I don't know, but when I am looking for a word, it's how much was I hurting in that moment, or laughing, or crying. It doesn't have to be a painful. I just am naturally drawn to the painful moments, I guess. So.
Most people that have been through a lot are drawn to painful experiences.
Well, most memoirs are painful experiences.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a reason that memoir is consistently the most profitable form of publishing in the Western world. We like to read other people's mail, and we like to read other people's pain. That's just how it goes.
It's good. It's just legal. I said it's just legal.
And it's legal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's legal.
And we can all relate to it. It's the side of us that many of us don't share. You know, the
Yeah.
pain and things that we go through. I love it, man. While you're telling that story, like, instantly, I mean, yes, it almost brought me to tears, too. But it's conjuring, I mean, like, I'm hearing your stories, but it's conjuring thoughts of images of my own children and memories coming to mind with them, you know? So as you're even sharing that, kind of like with some of the other questions, like with Jason, you know, what's going through your mind? Are you visualizing? Are you living through it again? Are you seeing it again? How do you kind of?
Oh, and there's some problems with this because it is just a second draft. So if you didn't notice, there's some tense changes a few times. The intent, though, and my memoir, the one I did correctly turned in, is written entirely in second person present tense. Because I had this horrible day. I had this traumatic experience, not for me, but my kids and their mom. And I chose for this chapter, peculiar perversity for a reason. There is a perversity in wanting to share your art. Even the pretty ones, right? Not just the darker ones. And in my own sense of perversity, what I want to do is how can I write this moment in a way that maximizes the vicarious suffering of the reader. Because to me it is a waste of time to put myself out here, right?
Right,
And then nobody but me feel it.
right,
Right?
right.
So I make specific artistic choices. Second person. So the entire time I'm writing this, it's you. But it's me, but it's you. But the you is also me. And so I'm, for the entirety of writing this, not just this portion, but what became the entire thesis, was a sublime experience in masochism. Self-flagellation. I mean, it was just, I just couldn't, I almost didn't make it. It was that rough. But I do that on purpose. Because if you read, it's different hearing it. Because I'm inflecting, I'm toning, I'm gesticulating. But if you were just to read it, it would be a much more raw experience for you. Because it's you, the word you, I looked it up Word, thank good God for these kind of technology. You is the most frequent word used in, 124 pages? So 40,000 words. Most of them are the word you. Because I want the reader, I know this is kind of dark, I want you to know it's me, but it could also be you,
Exactly.
right? The right amount of circumstances. And it's a deliberate artistic choice. Art is a perverse thing, right? My mother, who's also here, jokingly asked me, "Have you done any writing?" This is years ago. I don't know if you remember. "Have you done any writing today?" "No, I've done any writing." "Well, Ernest Hemingway wrote 2,000 words a day. I published a copy." I was like, "Well, Ernest Hemingway ate a bullet." And he did, and his son did too. And I believe his daughter also committed suicide, right? So there is some virtue in being a procrastinating writer and somewhat of a lazy writer. I'm 46, I've not eaten a bullet yet, and I don't intend to. I prefer swords anyway, right? It's in the title. So deliberate, my choices are deliberate. Maximize your experience and my experience, or your experience of my experience. Keith?
How, coming from me writing poetry, where I write it's imagery like you do, but in short, in smaller words. How do you do what you do without going too far? Like, how do you know when to stop? Because some people might go too far trying to describe something.
So this is what I had typed up when I woke up this morning. This I cut out at 2 o'clock today. And this is what I wrote to replace it. Now they're similar, but this is actually a little longer. Okay, because the part that's X'd out, is actually pieces that I copied and pasted from the original draft, the first draft. Okay? So you'll hear a lot of writers say, if you want to write, just puke on the page. Right? That's a pretty common piece of advice. I actually think it's a bad piece of advice. I really do. But with the early drafts, I'm writing almost every sentence that comes to mind. Almost. Right? But it doesn't stop there. I got here at 6:30, and I don't know if you can see it, but if you go through the 3 pages that were printed off, I cut out about 300 words. Right? So it's not, I'm doing the same thing poets do. Concision, for clarity, that kind of thing. I'm deliberately picking imagery, I'm deliberately trying to pick a cadence in the word choice, called prosody, if you want a grad school word, right? Prosody, which is how words work together to make certain sounds, right? It's usually a musical, it's more talked about in music theory than it is, but it does factor into professional. And so I'm not as interested in concision as a poet would be, but I am as interested in prosody. How are the words sounding together? I do poetry. I do American prose poetry, which is a different kind of thing. I also do lyrical essays, which aren't really that much different than American prose poems. I'm not sure why there's a distinction, but there are nerdier people than me who make those decisions. So, yeah, and I'm not necessarily even looking for short pieces. I'll write as much as works, right? So poetry, nonfiction, fiction, there's a few commonalities, and one of them is write what the hell works and leave it in there. And take out what doesn't. I yell this at my Comp 1 students. If it doesn't work, take it out. Right? You're not going to impress me with flowery language. Right? That's a great way from a C to a D, is trying to impress me. Right? So poetry, nonfiction, whatever it is, writing music. If it works, it stays. If it doesn't work, it goes. And if you want to know how something works, what do you want it to be? Right? This is the third selection from this memoir, or peripheral pieces, that I've read at Imagine. Okay? If all 3 times everyone was just cracking up laughing, I was like, I am failing miserably. Now the last piece was about a Bigfoot hunt I went on, so it was kind of funny. It was meant to be funny. But most of it is meant to hurt you. Right? So if none of you are hurting, if none of you are wanting to cry, I am failing, and I have to rethink my word choices. I have to rethink my sentence structure. You know, the comma, do you know how important the comma is in telling the story? Right? I hate the comma. Hate it, in terms of grammar. But you put a comma in a spot, and it changes the meaning of a sentence. Now there's this meme floating around, it's true. Commas save lives.
Yes.
And there's a sentence, let's eat grandma. Or let's eat, comma, grandma, right? It fundamentally changes the meaning of the text. Now I don't want to get political, but if you go look at the Second Amendment of our Constitution, there's a comma in the middle of there, right after a well-organized militia, comma, the right of the people to bear arms shall be infringed. I happen to be pretty pro-2A. If you're not, we can argue about it later, but that comma radically changes the interpretation of that passage. Okay? So when I tell my students, I don't make you do the grammar because I was forced to do it, and I'm going to make you do it. I recognize how critical a comma can be in your argument.
Exactly.
But it's not just nonfiction. Fiction is critical. In poetry, if you're going to use punctuation, you've got to be sure it's there for a reason, right? Because it changes the way. A line break with a comma in a poem is very different in meaning than a line break without a comma. So, Julie, you look like you're about to say something.
Well, I'm looking about what? Oh, yes. So, I think it's easy to find beauty in things that are pleasant, appealing. I mean, that's the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
But finding the beautiful in the struggle, the oddity, the struggle. I mean, the stuff that's just not, you look at it and go, no, that's not, beautiful. All the, I mean, I'm not a mother, but, just all the things that happen in birth.
Oh, it's gross.
It's gross.
It's gross.
I mean,
Yeah.
I still remember when they're like, you want to see the placenta as a nurse? I'm like, no, I don't. It's disgusting. I mean, but what comes from that is beautiful. There may be a struggle. There may be just a really dark, but there can be something beautiful. I think one thing that kind of just imagery that comes to me, is the cross was ugly, it was brutal, it was bloody, shameful, but there was beauty. There was beauty. And so I think, just having that, maybe, having the, with Darian just standing there, focusing.
To people.
But there was still,
Yeah.
right, but there was still, but you still found that beauty. You still found what was beautiful, and then just stopping and making the person listening or thinking about it, going, oh, okay, this struggle may look ugly and just but somehow there is something beautiful that you can see even in the ugly. There's something beautiful. So.
Well, context matters. I mean, understanding context of your art matters. Like I don't know. Are any of you familiar with Japanese poetry art? Not poetry art. Kujikiri, I think is how it's pronounced, right? They have this art form where they take broken pots
Yes.
and they use a golden lacquer,
Yeah.
and it doesn't fix it. It just puts the gold where the broken parts are, right? I mean, I have my issues with Asian culture anyway, but some things they get so right, right? And not only is it fixed, and it's more beautiful than it was when it was new, you can still use it
Yes,
for what it was intended to be,
exactly.
right? And so, because Imagine is about sharing creative processes, I really am trying at some point, there might be something beautiful about me someday. I've been lifting weights, so next year I might have something resembling a physique, right? But there is a sense in if you're a good artist. I don't trust artists who are happy all the time. I don't trust that. It's weird to me, right? People's like, I'm gonna be a painter. I'm like, you're gonna fail in 6 months because I don't know what you're pulling. What are you pulling from? You happy people? What are you pulling from? I don't get it. Right? But in terms of creativity, there's a point you gotta watch out for. Okay, I mean, if you're gonna dive into this, whatever your muck is, and I would love to read it someday. I would even buy it on the shelf if we're friends and it's on there. I'll support you that way. But you gotta be careful. You're not going from the dark to the scatological. And this is something I really struggled with early on in my years. Is because if you were to find what I turned in for my master's degree, you probably could. It's at Oklahoma City University somewhere. It's ugly. F-bombs everywhere, right? Because they were there in a day. I was swearing a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, but that's so ugly. I don't want anyone to go find it. And the commercial version has far fewer F-bombs in it. Okay. So there is beauty in the brokenness, but the artist has to constrain themselves. Or we get pieces of art like Piss Christ. You guys know what Piss Christ is?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You haven't heard of it as an artist, put a crucifix in a jar full of his own urine. And then submitted it. It was in a museum. I think it now, you can buy it for like $200,000 or something ridiculous like that. Right? I would destroy that if I could get away with it, right? It's scatological. It exists only to hurt, right? I want you to hurt, right? But at the end, there is a shinier moment towards the end of things. I want you to get to the end if you would read my word, but you have to be aware of what is going to completely turn off your audience, your intended audience. But work with your brokenness.
And I think that everybody deep down wants redemption.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it makes sense.
I don't know, redemption, I don't know. I think everyone wants a reckoning,
Yeah.
right? I think everyone wants a reckoning. They want an apology from someone, and they're not gonna get it, and that eats at them,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Right. Now, most people will realize, well, I need redemption, so they'll shift. Or hopefully they'll shift, right? But artists are like this too. Artists want a reckoning. There's something has hurt them, and they've got to show this to the world. And they want and I used to be like this. I still am. I want the world to apologize. Someone owes me an apology for what happened to me. Now I'll never get it. It'll never happen, right? There are people who have hurt me that could walk in the room and I wouldn't recognize them. It was so long ago. I remember the pain though, right? I think about that a lot. The difference between wanting redemption, or saying redemption, but you mean reckoning, or vice versa. You say reckoning, but you really want redemption, right? That's a theme I work in some ways: reckoning, redemption, revenge, right? Suicide. Maybe. I have a complicated relationship with forgiveness. So I try to avoid it. Because if I have to start, my priest says you have to forgive them. I don't want to forgive them. It's so much easier to right? So, yeah. See, now you got my juices. I'm thinking of other things I'm working on that deal with that. Right?
So I'll have to put a stop to it because he'll keep going. But is there any other fun?
We can keep going for
Oh, I
a
know,
long time.
we'll talk for hours.
Last thing,
Yeah, go for it.
please, sign up over there. Let me know your contact information, and we will send you the information you need to sign up for and join the one-time workshop. And the intent is, there's no cap on attendance for the particular workshop. It's not really a workshop, it's a seminar, but I'm putting together multi-week workshop seminars with much smaller groups of people where I help you work through your work, whatever that is, poetry, fiction, nonfiction. So sign up over there, or someone you think might be interested, and follow Imagine on Facebook. Eventually we'll have an X page, and
Yeah.
the whole digital universe will have access to
Yeah.
that. So,
I think
but-
this next season will be different. is what you're saying, too. Yeah.
but thank you all for coming, and thank you for listening.